Okay, we have a document open, but let's create a new one. Command N on a Mac or Control N on a PC. And let's choose Landscape Orientation. And click OK. We'll go under the Window menu to Workspace, and let's choose Like and Design. And go into the View menu, and let's uncheck Smart Guides. Now going back to the Tools panel, this time we're going to click and hold on the Line Segment tool and see the hidden tools here. We'll go out to the vertical bar and release the mouse, and now we've got a tear-off toolbar with the tools associated with the line segment tool. And that would be the arc tool, the spiral tool, rectangle grid, and polar grid. Now with the line tool, we can click and drag and create a line segment. Let's go over to the stroke panel and make it a little bit heavier. Let's go ahead and choose 10 point. So we'll make it a heavier line every time we click and drag. And Command A or Control A to select all and delete. Now if we click and drag with the line segment tool and hold down the Shift key, it constrains it to either a vertical, horizontal, or a line at a 45-degree angle. So holding down the Shift key constrains it, and it's important to know that you should release the mouse first before you release the Shift key. That way you can be sure it's either horizontal, vertical, or at an exact 45-degree angle. Command A, Control A, select all, and delete. Now if we just click once with the line segment tool, we get the line segment tool options, and we can determine the exact length and angle here. Now if you notice, if we zoom in, I'm going to hold down the space bar and the command key, or the space bar and the control key on a PC, and I'm going to zoom in and look at the end of that rule, that line, very closely. If we go to the stroke panel, we can see that we have several options for the projecting cap, the round cap, or the butt cap. So let's click on round cap, and now we see the end of the line is rounded. And if we click on projecting cap, we see it projects beyond the path. If we go into outline mode, Control Y or Command Y, we see there's the actual path. And we go back into preview mode, Control Y or Command Y, and now we see the actual stroke is extending beyond the path. So we'll go back to round cap and then back to butt cap. And this is the one that we usually use when drawing line segments. But if you wanted a softer, more organic feel, you might want the round cap on the ends of your lines. So we'll go back to the first one and Command 0 or Control 0 to fit in window, and let's hit the delete key. Now if we go to the second tool, if we click on the arc tool and click and drag, we get a curved arc, and it matters whether we drag from left to right, right to left, top to bottom, bottom to top. So we get this various arc segments, line segments, which may or may not be that useful. Let's go ahead and select all, Command A, Control A, select all, delete. And this time, let's click once with the arc tool, and we get the arc segment tool options. Now we've been drawing open arcs, but let's see what happens when we draw a closed arc. So let's choose closed here, and instead of convex, let's go ahead and move it in a little bit toward concave, and make it a little bit more concave. Now click OK, and we get one there, and when we click and drag, we get what's called a closed arc. Now once again, it matters whether you drag from left to right, right to left, up to down, or down to up. Now once again, this may not be that useful, unless maybe we would use it to make a frame. So let's do that. Select all, delete, and let's go ahead and just draw one, and make the stroke a little bit lighter. Instead of 10 point, let's go ahead and make it 5 point. And I'm going to get my black arrow, my selection tool, and move it over here to the right a little bit. Now this will become the upper right hand corner of a frame, and we're simply going to manipulate the closed arc. So I'll click on the arc and hold down the Option key or the Alt key, and then add the Shift key and drag to the left. Now I've made an exact copy of that arc, and holding down the Option or Alt key makes the copy. Holding down the Shift key constrains it to a vertical, horizontal, or 45-degree angle movement. So now with the second arc, let's go ahead and double-click on the Reflect tool, which is one of the tools associated with the Rotate tool. We'll go down here to the Reflect tool and double-click on the Reflect tool. So now we're going to reflect across a vertical axis. I'll check Preview and see what's going to happen when I click OK. And that's what we want. We want a mirror image of that arc. So let's go ahead and click OK. And I'll go back and get my selection tool, the black arrow. Click, add the Shift key, and drag it a little bit closer to the other one. And now with the black arrow, the selection tool, I'll click and drag around these two objects. We get the dotted marquee, and when I release the mouse, both of them are selected. Now once again, I'll click on one of these and add the Option or Alt key, and then the Shift key, and drag down. So we make a copy exactly below the previous one. This time, we'll go back and double-click on the Reflect tool, and we're going to reflect across a horizontal axis this time. So sure enough, with Preview checked, we see that it makes a mirror image of the top two, and we'll go ahead and click OK. And now we've got something that could serve as a frame. If I go back and choose the black arrow, the selection tool, and click and drag to select all four, I could actually go over to the Swatches panel and fill with a color. So long as our fill indicator is to the front, which it is, and now we can fill those arcs with a color. Let's go ahead and hit the Delete key, and this time click on the Spiral tool, and we draw a spiral when we click and drag. And once again, it matters if you drag from left to right, right to left, top to bottom, or bottom to top. Select all, delete. This is actually, a spiral like this is actually quite difficult to draw using the pen tool. So this tool may come in handy if you need a spiral, maybe for decoration. Let's go ahead and select all and delete, and click once with the Spiral tool, and we get the spiral options. The amount of decay shows how tightly curved the spiral is. So we'll just bring it down to 60, and then click OK. And now we see that our spiral is not as tight as it was before. Select all, delete, and let's go to the Rectangle Grid tool. We'll choose that and click and drag. So when we click and drag, we get a nice rectangular grid. Now keep in mind that this is not like an Excel document. Select all, delete. When we make a rectangular grid using the Rectangle Grid tool, these are not cells. You cannot click inside them and start typing with the Type tool. You'd actually have to create a text object inside each one in order to do that. So it's basically just a grid. Maybe we would need this to draw some tile on a floor if we were drawing a house, something like that. Let's go ahead and select and delete, and click once with the rectangular grid tool, and we get the options box. And so you can see you can change the number of horizontal dividers. Let's make it 7, and we'll change the vertical dividers to 7 as well, and click OK. And so now we get a grid with more vertical and horizontal dividers. Let's go ahead and delete that, and choose the Polar Grid tool, and click and drag with the Polar Grid tool, and we get some ovals. Let's go ahead and select all, delete, and this time click and drag holding down the Shift key, and we get a polar grid that's exactly a circle. And we could have done that with a rectangular grid also. Holding down with the Shift key with a rectangular grid, we would get an exact square. Now once again, this may not be that useful. It's not a graph, it's just lines. Let's go ahead and select, and with the polar grid tool, let's just click once and take a look at the polar grid tool options. One thing that might be useful is that we could go down to the radial dividers, and instead of choosing a number, put in 0 there for the radial dividers, and let's see what happens. Let's increase the size a little bit. Let's go up. I'm going to tab up and change the width to 3 and the height to 3. But let's see what happens when we have 0 radial dividers. What we get is a bunch of concentric circles. And if we were to select these with the white arrow, the direct select tool, let's go choose that. And we'll click over here where there is nothing to deselect. And we could actually select each circle one at a time and fill with a different color. So I'll go over to the swatches panel and fill that one. Click on the second one and fill that with a different color. And then the next one and fill that with a color, and so on and so forth, until now we have each of the circles, each of the concentric circles, filled with a different color. So that's one use that we might have for the polar grid tool. So now we've looked at the line tools, the line segment tool, the arc tool, the spiral, rectangular grid, and polar grid tool.